So now we're actually going to talk about pulling on Ted Cruz here. The buyout by Disney of Lucasfilm. So I don't know how we're chugging along. We got a lot of. I mean, the prequels are over now. Star Wars has kind of been resigned to the expanded universe. The expanded universe now, and a lot of people don't think about this, but it was Star Wars at that point. I mean, we had the Clone Wars going on, and it was the Star Wars after the prequels. The Star Wars was the Clone Wars. The Clone Wars was Star Wars. There was, as far as, and they came out with that movie, which I agree with everybody else was a pretty terrible movie. It was an excuse to go see Star Wars in the theaters, which I liked, which is what I'm saying. I liked the fact that it was an excuse to go, but it was a poor excuse because it ended up being a poor movie, if you will, or just poor storytelling, however you want to look at it. It wasn't that great. It wasn't even meant to be a movie. It just kind of, hey, we should have this as a movie because there are no other Star Wars movies. So how about this one? Um, Overall, I liked the Clone Wars. It was pretty cool, especially near the end. I really didn't like Ahsoka Tano. I thought she was just a turd. And as it moved on, I really grew to really like Ahsoka Tano. I know some people just don't like her. Anyways, I actually really grew to like that character. And at the end, she was the only reason I watched the Clone Wars. Really, was the Clone Wars terrible? No, of course not. It was good. I liked it. It wasn't all that Star Warsy. Again, kind of like the rest of the prequels. I liked it, and it had Star Wars elements, but it wasn't Star Warsy. Um, but again, yeah, I really Ahsoka Tano was the one positive I really pulled out of the Clone Wars. There was other things that were good about it. It's not saying that's the only good thing. Everything was just total. That's not what I'm saying. It's just that the shining moment, the thing that like triumphs over everything else, that kind of made it worth watching all of them, was Ahsoka Tano. They totally transformed her for Rebels, which I don't really like. A lot of people like it because they didn't like Ahsoka anyway, so now she's not Ahsoka anymore, despite the fact she looks the same, has the same name. Um, so I mean, yeah, she's been gone. It's been however many years. Yeah, of course she's gonna be changed, but she's not gonna be different. It's not gonna be a different person, and this is a different character. If I kind of wish they didn't, it wasn't Ahsoka. It was somebody just a different character. I'd have been totally okay with it. The fact they made it Ahsoka and then changed her, I'm not a big fan of. It's not really what the video is about, of course, but that's just kind of the context of where Star Wars fans were at that point, and me, of course, specifically. So the expanded universe was our Star Wars then. If you wanted to have more Star Wars in your life, a new Star Wars in your life, that's where you went. The Clone Wars was still a little bit too kid friendly for me, as far as I mean, it was Star Wars, but it was, I mean, because it was the closest to canon that you got, and in fact, they even said after a little while it was canon because Lucas was involved. And this is canon. This is G canon, but it wasn't the stories I was interested in. So we got past the New Jedi Order at that point, and we were, I believe, the one with Jason Solo turning to the dark side. Sorry, spoiler if you haven't read it and actually plan on reading those. I doubt it, but he turns to the dark side. And that was I'm trying to remember what that story, because after New Jedi Order there was a couple other, like there was like the Killick trilogy or something, and they had these little things. This one was like the Last of the Jedi or something like that. Um, I honestly don't remember because the titles after that of the sagas were kind of a bit convoluted and a little bit, you know, the beginning of time kind of a thing. It's like so generic, doesn't really mean anything. Uh, so basically that was our Star Wars, and it went forward in time, which I like. I don't like going back and reading like all the prequel and the Clone Wars stuff that they were coming out because I like to go forward. I want to know what happens next. Not what happened before. What happens next. I don't just want to revisit something because it has characters I like or something. So it was about the other than that, it was this one comic that I actually read, and the reason I read it was because it was as far forward as you got. This was like the latest Star Wars stuff that was happening timeline wise. It was 100 years or something like that in the future. It was called Legacy, or there was a timeline of the Legacy. It was Cade Skywalker and one of my favorite Sith of all time, Darth Krayt. So, and those were the only comics I really even read, and it was just because of that, because of where it was and everything. I've actually gone back since and read a lot of the beginning Sith stuff that I really dig, and an omnibus that had, the hyperspace wars and the golden age of the Sith and all that, because I was interested in that kind of stuff. Um, but again, the whole point is context of where we were as Star Wars fans at that time. And so then the announcement comes out. It was Disney had bought Lucasfilm. It wasn't even Lucas is retiring. He's not going to do so, because that was like a constant thing. Lucas retiring. He's never going to do any more movies. Even before the prequels, that was it. But yeah, he's retired. It wasn't like he's retiring. He's selling it. Who's he going to sell to? Who knows? There's several bidders. It wasn't like that. It was just all suddenly Disney. I'm like, Disney? Wait a minute. You're going to turn Luke Skywalker into Mickey Mouse? I mean, obviously that wasn't literal. Oh, he's going to have mouse ears. Hey, I'm Luke Skywalker. That's a terrible Mickey, by the way. But that wasn't it. It was just, I don't want Luke, Mickey Skywalker. I don't want that kind of a vibe in my Star Wars. And people say, oh, well, look, they did, Marvel. And I was like, yeah, Marvel's its own thing, though. Marvel's owned by Disney, but it's its own thing. And one of the problems is Disney had always so much had a connection to Star Wars. With the Mickey Mouse things and the Star Wars weekends and the, I'm trying to remember the name of the actual Star Tours. So they've always had a connection. But it's almost like Disney adopted Star Wars and made it Disney for themselves. So when you hear about it, it's like, oh, now they don't even have a barrier there of Lucas saying this is Star Wars. You can adapt it, but this is Star Wars, and that's your, Disney-fied Star Wars. It's like now it's all Disney-fied Star Wars. But then some people started making, and I freaking hated it. It was the worst news I'd heard ever. And then they said, oh, they're gonna make new movies. I don't care. I don't want them to make new movies. I love new Star Wars movies, but I don't want them making the new movies. And they're like, oh yeah, well, but Lucasfilm's still going to be Lucasfilm and blah. Well, there was a lot of question about that anyways, of whether Lucasfilm is going to be Lucasfilm or it's just going to be Disney. And they said, no, it's still going to be Lucasfilm in there, and Kathleen Kennedy's taken over, and she's been like a partner to George Lucas for like ever. So, I mean, she's been in there. First off, we've seen that happen before. I remember, I can't remember the guy's name now, but he took over for Gene Roddenberry. It was a doofus thing. And I'm trying to remember something else like that, where somebody had taken over a major franchise for somebody who passed on or something, and they totally just destroyed. It's like, these people are kind of like the understudies, and they're like, oh, well, he's been with this the whole time, so he really knows how to. No, they had not a freaking clue. And they took over and wiped these things out because they didn't know what to do with them, really. They were so much the understudy and never the one who would step up. They just couldn't fill the shoes. They couldn't carry it on even in a new direction. They just totally bombed it. We can go on forever about why and how, but so to me, that's what was happening here. I mean, I like Kathleen Kennedy and everything that she did with George and everything, but give her the reins and what's going to happen to it. I like the fact that she is the head of Lucasfilm, but she's not like George Lucas. He's like, I am going to gather talented people around me, and we are going to deal with this thing from a story point of view. And I think that's awesome. This is one of the most awesome things I heard about it. But that came later, actually. All that information about that came later. So I totally hated it. I don't want Disney-fied Star Wars. But the one thing that really started to turn me around was everybody said, you know what, Pirates of the Caribbean is Disney. I mean, how Disney is Pirates of the Caribbean? You see mouse ears and stuff and all this stuff running around, and I thought, that is an excellent point. I mean, it's not that Pirates of the Caribbean is such an adult film, but I never once saw it and went, yeah, that's for little kids. It's a kid joke. It was just an enjoyable movie. Let's forget the second and the third, which everybody really doesn't like. I actually really like the second one. It was as good as the first, no, but I really actually kind of like the second. The third, I'll tell you one thing that destroyed the third. I know it's a little bit of a tangent, but again, it's a little bit related because it's Disney and what they're do with their properties. Was that new song? They had like Dead Man's Chest, and they had Yo Ho Ho, totally cool, and they pulled it right out. But then they created a whole new song, and it was like the whole basis of the movie, and this whole ending. It all was terrible. The song was terrible. Making the song the whole point of the movie was it was terrible. If it wasn't for that one thing, and they did something different, I mean, obviously they did something different, but I mean, just because of that one thing, if they just taken it out and didn't have that concept, even if most of the rest of the movie stayed similar, you know what I mean? I think it would have been a way better movie. I think that song and their whole "we're going to stick with that song and that's our basically our movie" was the worst thing to do and was executed badly. They could have done that and been good, but they didn't. So, but keeping in mind what they did with that and with some other stuff that they'd done, and then of course factoring in Marvel and learning that Lucasfilm was really still going to be Lucasfilm. It was going to have something now to do with Star Wars, with Disney, and I thought. It's because I start coming around. I'm like, okay, you know what? I think this might actually be able to work because Lucas has always maintained, even though things fluctuate, Lucas has a different story for everything every year or two. Just, oh no, it wasn't that. It was this. Oh, okay. Well, how was? Oh no, it wasn't that. It was this. Oh, okay. Well, that's not what you said last time. Okay, whatever. But one thing he's always kind of maintained is that his story's always been for kids, not Saturday cartoon for kids, but that kids should be kind of his base audience. That's where he builds up from. He wants kids to be able to enjoy all of this stuff. And who's really been able to do that as well as Disney? I mean, like, you think Pixar and stuff like that, but really, consistently, and for the longest amount of time, Disney has been able to do that, and more so lately, that they really make things so that kids can enjoy them, but they're not for kids. Not that they don't do that, but they can do that well. So I thought, okay, I'm actually going to have a little hope. And then this is J.J. Abrams, who I love the Star Trek reboot, and I was a huge fan of the original stuff. Not everything, but again, that could be a totally different video. But I love what J.J. did with the thing because he honored the old stuff so much, to be honest. That was the biggest selling point for me. This was a reboot, it was different, but he did not destroy the original. He honored it. And, yeah, and of course you can honor it badly, like, look at Superman Returns. There was awesome stuff in that, the honoring of the old legacy, but it was just turned out to be kind of terrible in the end. But, so, overall, my first impressions with Disney was I freaking hate it. It was the worst news I'd ever heard, and then the new movie has just made it worse. But now I'm kind of on board with the whole thing. Now I'm actually kind of getting excited a little bit. Let's see, we got, what, 2, 3, 4 more planned videos. So I'm gonna be done with this, and I'm gonna go on what one of the biggest reasons I'm even doing these videos is gonna start the next one, and that's gonna be the canon stuff and getting rid of the old canon and bringing in this new canon. One of the biggest, reasons I'm doing these videos. So we're gonna end this one and we'll move on.